This is Karthik Krishnaswamy from Nginx Product Marketing. I have Ken A and Ken B from Nginx Product Management joining me for this session as well. We will be talking about managing your apps and APIs at scale. Now that you've deployed your Nginx instances, let's talk about how you can really empower your DevOps teams in managing their applications. You can use Nginx Controller Application Delivery Module to accomplish this. This is an app-centric control plane solution for all your Nginx Plus load balancers. It enables your DevOps teams to deploy load balancers for modern cloud-native applications using a self-service approach and enables NetOps teams to ensure compliance with corporate security policies by setting guardrails rather than gates, accelerating deployment velocity and faster time to market. You can quickly and easily configure, secure, monitor, and troubleshoot load balancing for your applications, all using an intuitive app-centric user interface. Let me now turn it over to Ken A, who will showcase some of these capabilities.
Thanks, Karthik, for that introduction. I'm going to talk in more detail about Nginx Controller ADC functionality. I'm Ken Araujo. I'm the ADC Program Manager for Controller. And as Karthik mentioned, Nginx Controller is the control plane that is used to configure ADC functionality in Nginx instances, shown to the right of this slide. The Nginx instances are the data plane, and Controller is responsible for configuring these Nginx instances, where a particular instance can correspond to Nginx Plus running on bare metal. It can be running on a virtual machine that's hosted in the cloud or on-prem. It can be running on a container. So these are the Nginx instances that give us ADC load balancing and reverse proxy functionality. Controller provides a RESTful API, so automation scripts can be used to send configuration data pertinent to applications to these Nginx instances. Everything is presented in terms of applications because these are important to the DevOps and NetOps personas that Controller is trying to meet the needs of. So everything, configuration of this Nginx Plus infrastructure is presented in terms of applications, and all the metrics, etc., events that are reported are available as well via this API, and they can be forwarded to external systems such as Splunk, Datadog. There is a portal interface, and that portal interface uses the same API to Controller, and the instances that are configured continue to function, even if Controller goes offline for a little bit. We also have RBAC capabilities, so different users can be allowed different access to configuring Controller, reading, writing, deleting aspects of Controller. So now let me do a quick demo of Controller. I'm going to use the web portal interface to Controller. And Controller has a number of functional areas. And you can see we have platform, infra, services, and analytics. Services is the one I'm going to focus on, which lets you configure applications and the reverse proxy and load balancing functionality associated with ADC. But before I go there, I just want to talk to you about some of the other capabilities that are coincidental with the ADC functionality. And one of the important functionalities can be found on the platform. It's the ability to create RBAC roles and associate these with users. So you can see here that I have a user called the certificate administrator. That user has capabilities associated with two roles, the guest role. And the guest role pretty much gives the user read capabilities to all elements in the environment, but we've also created a platform certificate role, which gives this user read, write, delete capabilities to the certificate object. And going a little bit into more detail as far as the API is concerned, you can see that in this API, we have a user role called user1 full. And in this user role, you can see that this user has been granted only write capabilities to a particular instance. In that Nginx instance, the user can access is this particular instance with this IP address, and that is one of the virtual machines we have running in AWS in this demo. And that user has full access to all services for environment, user1-environment. So what this means is pretty much this user can create applications in the user1 environment, can deploy these applications only on this particular instance. And if there are other users, for example, if you have a dev environment and a product environment, users in one environment who have access to the dev environment cannot have or change configuration or receive events and metrics associated with a different environment, for example, the production environment. So we have the ability to partition, and you can partition all the way. You can define all the rights to any of these objects in the API, and you can partition all the way, as we've shown here, that this user role can have access to this environment and can only any applications created in that environment can only be deployed on this particular instance. So a very powerful capability. Next, I'd like to go into services in more detail. Services is where you define your apps, you define and all the reverse proxy and load balancing capabilities associated with your apps. So here I'm in my overview screen for all my apps. My system has 3 applications associated with it. And at a high level, I can use Data Explorer to look at an overview of a particular application, and I can go in and I can dig into any of these dimensions associated with the application. So if I want to, for example, here bytes received, and I want to see bytes received by request method, I can do that, and I can see how many bytes were received for get versus post. So those are that's what this overview screen for the apps gives me. Now, if I go into a particular application, this is the mortgages services application. An application, and here, if I'm digging into a particular application, then the metrics I see here are the metrics applicable to that application itself. So this is the bytes in, bytes out, or latency metrics applicable to my mortgages service application. My mortgages services application consists of 4 components. These components correspond to microservices that are logical entities that make up the application. And each of these microservices in turn can correspond to back-end application servers that receive the traffic and work on the traffic. So if I look at one of these components in particular, if I go to its overview screen, again, I see the traffic metrics just for that component. If I go into that component and look at what I can define, I can define the URIs for the component. So this component has a relative URI of login, so it will terminate any data that comes into a host /login. And the host part of the URI is associated with the gateway, which we will look at later. But let's go into some other aspects of this component. We can define the workload groups associated with this component. Okay, so for this particular component, it has backend workload URIs, and we can see here that it's hosted by two backends. These are the IP addresses of the backends. We can also define these backends via DNS. We can define details of what load balancing algorithm we want to use to get traffic to these backends. We can also define other things such as monitoring. Monitoring lets you say, do you want to set up health monitor requests? We can say, do we want to enable a WAF? So if you enable a WAF in the data path, all the traffic will flow through this WAF, and spurious or negative traffic will be dropped. We can look at errors and logs. So the component lets you configure details about what you want to happen to your data as it traverses the Nginx data plane. And I think that it may make sense to also look at the campaign services component. And if I look at this component, you'll see that here for programmability, we've done some munging on the data. We've done a rewrite. So if something comes in that's accessing ad pages, we replace in the URI with campaign before we forward it on to the backend server. We've also done some request header modification where we have these on the X upstream header and the X special header. So that gives you an overview of the component, the microservice piece that's associated with an application. It shows you the power of how easy it is to configure it when we think about infrastructure in terms of applications and the microservices that make up the application. I did talk to you about gateways, and I'm going to go into that in a second, but another thing is to protect this application traffic and to be able to decrypt it and re-encrypt it so we can work on this application traffic. You can upload certificates into the system. They can be uploaded either in PKCS 12 or PAM format. And here we see the system. We've uploaded certs and there's associated keys into the system. For two certificates, we can see that they're healthy, i.e. the expiry date is quite far out. In the future, we're also given warnings of particular certificates that are about to expire so that we know that we have to do certificate renewal. Finally, I just want to talk about a gateway. So we talked that an application is associated with particular gateways. And here we have a lending gateway where all the particular components of this application, they reference that gateway. And so you can see we looked at the login service, we looked at the campaign service. These two components or microservices of the application access this lending gateway. And what is the configuration in the gateway? The configuration in the gateway gives you the host name that the relative URI in the component is applicable to. So the relative URI in the components we looked at were relative paths based of this hostname lending.acmefinancial.net. And here we've also configured that since we have HTTPS traffic or TLS traffic associated with this host name, that the certificate reference for the certificate keys and certificate data that we've uploaded into the system that we should use to decrypt, re-encrypt this data is here. This acmefinancial.net is the reference to the certificate that we saw here. Here's the one that can be used for decrypting that traffic to that component for that application. Finally, when I talked about gateways, some of those host names that were shown in the gateway that I showed in the gateway, the system gives you the flexibility that if necessary, this host name can be configured directly in the component. I think that gives a good overview of what ADC functionality is, and I'm going to hand back to Karthik now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken A, for going through the controller ADC capabilities. That was great. So now that you know how to manage your apps using controller, what about your APIs? That's where Nginx API management module comes in. This is a full lifecycle API management solution. You can define, monitor, secure, and analyze your APIs. What is radically different and innovative about our solution is our decoupled approach to API management. The data plane, Nginx API gateways, do not need runtime connectivity with the control plane, the controller, to just process API calls. So unlike other solutions, there's no need to traverse through databases or third-party tools just to process an API call. It results in really high performance. It also enables you to deploy your API gateways across a distributed environment, wherever you want them, on-premise, in the cloud, test, sandbox, production environments. And every API management function, from definition to ongoing maintenance, can be automated using APIs themselves, which makes it really DevOps friendly. We have just introduced the capability to deploy Web Application Firewall, Nginx App Protect from controller. WAF can be co-located with the API gateway to achieve distributed API security as well, distributed API management and distributed API security across, again, a distributed environment. You can fine-tune WAF policies, get visibility into a variety of insights such as top WAF threats and targeted APIs, as well as WAF violation events. Can you please showcase some of these capabilities?
Thanks, Karthik. Hi, I'm Ken Barenfreund. I'm one of the PMs on the API management squad at Nginx. Going to continue from where Karthik had introed and talk a little bit about my environment specifically, and I'm going to walk you through controller. And I've got my environment configured just as you see in this PowerPoint slide. And again, Karthik highlighted the point that we're decoupled. And in this specific case, a client making API calls is going to hit our Nginx Plus API gateway. And in my environment, I actually have two different back-end runtimes. It's going to do a proxy to these. One of them is set up for current price. It's a Bitcoin pricing, just an example API. But you can see controller here. Controller here pushes my configuration and policy out. Nginx Plus then will proxy to my back-end API runtimes. And then also I have another API gateway, another Nginx Plus instance that is serving as a dev portal. And we think of API management as having essentially two personas: the API owner who in the full life cycle of API management publishes APIs, secures APIs, tests APIs, and on the other side is the consumer that's going to start using these. They're going to discover them on the dev portal. They're going to build them into their applications. They're going to monitor them. So both use cases are served in this infrastructure. And the other thing I'm going to show you, this is cool, this is brand new, is our WAF. And the WAF is going to be running on we call it advanced security, and it's going to be running on this this API gateway. And it's going to be before the requests are proxied to the back end, it's going to act. And I've got it actually configured to block. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to be blocking some scripting problems. So let me jump right into it. I'll jump you over to controller. Okay, cool. So I want to show you a little bit first about my, just tying it out to my PowerPoint slide. These are my two Nginx Plus instances. They are both running in AWS. You can see that they're at US West, and they are both configured in controller. And Ken A went over some of the gateway configuration. I have two gateways, and again, one of them is running on one Nginx Plus instance, and the other is running on the other Nginx Plus instance. So this one is serving as our dev portal, which I'll show you really quick. And this one is serving as my API gateway. Again, just aligning with my photo or my slide. let me show you the dev portal. And again, just imagine, you're a consumer, and I, in my diagram, I showed you those, the runtimes that we already have published. So if I'm coming in and I want to consume these, I see that I have some finance APIs and I have some Scriber services. One of the finance APIs is the one I talked about, the endpoint for Bitcoin, where I can get at finance.example.com, I can get the current price. And there's how I do it using, in fact, this is pretty cool. There's a get on that, few docs. I can go in here and see the documentation. And you can see that, it's just a simple get against my finance.example.com and hitting it right there, and it's going to return a JSON payload. So that's really how it's all published. And as you get into my controller, now I'm putting on my other hat to say, hey, I want to publish these and I'm going to push them out. And if you remember that my controller was outside of the data path, and I'm using my controllers and the control plane to push these changes out. You can see here that this pretty much exactly aligns with what you saw in my dev portal. I have a number of APIs that are published. And in our structure here, you can see that we have this hierarchy that helps us manage and easily deploy multiple versions of APIs. It starts with a definition. A definition is essentially your specs. It's a collection of specs. And in this case, I have one spec. It's the Bitcoin API that I've set up. And then I could take that and I could have multiple specs, and I could take each spec and publish them to different environments. So, or multiple times. You could publish as many times as you want. But it really eases with the full lifecycle management of how to manage, secure, and through the whole lifecycle. So let me show you just this real quick, that this one that I've published, it's set up it's set up so that it's running against my production environment. It's set up to I have an app created, and Ken went through some of the app configuration. This is more about where my microservices lie. This is where the code components reside. But what I've done is said for this published API, for Ingress, use this Finance API gateway and publish it also to my dev portal. So there's when controller pushes it out, as you saw in that diagram, it's going to put configurations on both Nginx Plus instances. One is going to serve as my Finance API gateway, and the other one's my dev portal. And what did I publish actually? And if I'm going to show you my spec, I'm going to re-import my spec and show you how that all worked out. But there's only a simple one endpoint, which is to get the current price of Bitcoin. I actually, you could see, have configured that to have WAF turned on. And what's interesting about that is there are several choices of how you can secure your app. I could put in rate limiting. I would want to have authentication most likely. I don't have authentication configured, but I could use JOT or API key. And in this case, really excited about this new feature. I can enable WAF, and I can also, typically when I'm tuning a WAF, what I might want to do first is just do a monitor on it, because I want to see what comes back, and I want to understand if I really want to block on those. But in this case, I just turned on my WAF, and so it's now blocking traffic. And I'm going to show you what the result of that is, because I did a whole bunch of bad things to get ready for this, and I'll show you how that looks. So under my Finance APIs, I have security events. In the last 24 hours, I've been busy. It takes a little bit here to retrieve. So there it is. You can see that I got, as I was hitting this CoinDesk component, I have HTTP parser attacks. It's been blocking the heck out of them, which is great. And I think I want to show you that there's I apologize about the performance here. Something in my Murphy's Law with my demo environment. But this has a particular signature associated with it. There it is. Here we go. Great. A whole bunch of detail here on what happened, and you can see I have these two signature IDs. I can't think that I wouldn't want to block or I wouldn't want to let these pass to my back end. But if I did want to let it pass, in other words, maybe that violation isn't one that I actually want to block, I could go back to my API and disable those signatures. So I could go back into what I've published and routing, CoinDesk, and under the advanced security, I did not copy those signatures, but imagine they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what that would do is disable that signature, and when that signature is disabled, the traffic would pass. So that's the WAF feature, and it blocked my request before it was proxied onto my back end. How did I get here? How did I bring this spec in? How did I start this process? So I'm going to actually bring in a new version under the Bitcoin folder. I'm going to add a version, and this version is actually not different from my former version, but I actually have a YAML that defines my API. It's called bitcoin.yaml. Oh, I didn't think. Let me show. I think I could show you that really quick. Actually, I cannot. But let me pull it in. I wanted to show the YAML. Let me pull that onto another screen here really quick. Very simple YAML. Very simple, which defines, it's an OpenAPI 3 spec. It has some description in it. It tells it this version. I'm going to make this version 2. Powered by CoinDesk. And that's very simple API definition. Let me do that again and bring it in as 2. So you can see here, I should change that to 2. Let me try this again. Did I not save it? So loading API definitions, there's 2. It seems that the reason for the slow performance is actually my laptop by sharing video. Okay, so there's version 2. It should be saved. Let me try again to add a version. Browse. Actually, yeah, let's browse for it here. Today at 12:03. Yep. There it is. There's version 2. It's a Bitcoin API. So again, what I have is a very simple spec. When we talk about the full life cycle, oftentimes you can do design here within Controller, but maybe use Swagger instead. There are many great design tools. So you can bring them in as simple as bringing in JSON or a YAML file. And taking the next step here, all that my YAML file defined was a single get at this V1 BPI to get current price. What it does, we have an API first design for Controller. So everything that you see me doing in the GUI, I can do all of this using our REST API. And here's the payload. I would just do a put against, you can see the path there. This is doing a put against Controller with that payload, and that creates the spec. It puts the spec into Controller. So let me submit that. And that's how I got to the point of having that other version that you saw published already. So let me take the next step and take this other version and publish it. So what I would do here is I'm going to call this the new one. So let's call it Bitcoin 2. Let's see. This time, yes, same. I'm going to put it in production environment. I'm going to put it in my finance with my finance APIs. Use the same gateway, and also put it. I'm going to skip the dev portal for now. And there you can see that brought that over for my definition. Now what I do is define my backend. Call this Bitcoin 2. And then I can define my backend workload. So you saw all this in already running, but that's how I get to this point. I could publish this as another API. So that concludes what I was planning to talk about today. So I'm going to turn it back to Karthik now.
Thank you, Ken B, for that great overview of API management functionality. You're probably now wondering how you can try Nginx Controller. There is a free trial available. You can access the free trial from our website, nginx.com, free trial request, Nginx Controller. Please go ahead, download the free trial and have fun with Nginx Controller. Thank you.